Chapter 1, Mentality. What we think about, we end up doing. So what do we think about when we jungle? Jungle is like any other role in the game. It revolves around gold over time. That's it. I know there are lots of fallacies out there that answer this question. Some might dictate a jungler's job is to help their laners. The only help I want to give to a laner is killing their opponent because that gives me gold. I don't want to run to a lane and sit in a brush for 30 seconds when all my camps are up. I don't want to help shove a wave I don't have to help shoving because I could be farming my own jungle camps or the enemy jungler's camps, and we're also sharing experience. Are you sure you want that as a laner? You really want to be a lower level than your opponent? That's some freak season mental. When you watch a pro game, and it's the same for any game, how do we determine who's ahead? All we have to do is look at the team gold at the top of our screens. How do we determine which player is the most fed? We literally look at how much gold they've spent, in other words, what items they have and how many of them. We don't say, wow, this jungler sat in 5 brushes this game waiting for something to happen. How valuable? Value comes from gold. So if I now ask you, why do we gank? If your answer is to burn a flash, or because your laner pinged you to, or because you feel bad for literally not ganking any lane up until that point, nah bro, just gank because you can get a kill. You can get gold. In this game, my Dr. Mundo is spam pinging me, asking me to gank a no flash Gwen. I'm not going to go through this game, but I end up 1v9ing because I adhere to my version of jungling, this version of jungling. Do not feel bad about your laners getting diffed. It happens in every game. If they start pinging you for help, and this is even the same in pro games by the way, they are literally saying, I don't know this matchup, can you bail me out? How about just learning the matchup, or how about just not blind picking Cassidin? Recently I beat Shaden on 180 ping, who's been rank 1 North America, and I even have a video detailing my thought processes in that game and why I was able to have a big impact despite my laners literally giving him free kills after he shows on vision. So I'd urge you to go watch that video. Chapter 2, Playstyle. So if jungling is all about gold, how do we actually go about playing the jungle? Well, laners have minions, junglers have camps. Camps are your minions, and just like laners, junglers can move away from their minions, their camps, to kill someone on the enemy team. That is literally what jungling is. You farm your camps or the enemy jungler's camps until an enemy champion is asking to be killed. In this game against Shaden, I hit level 3. Lots of junglers might keep clearing here, but I decide to gank mid lane. And because of this playstyle, so to speak, I kill Diana and can snowball the game. You are always farming in a game of League. Whether it's camps or champs, you are always farming. Why? Because that's gold. Chapter 3. Information is power. But Eagz, should I gank a certain number of times by 10 minutes? Do I prioritize dragon over grubs? These are two of probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of questions I've been asked over the years, and the answer is always the same. The game will tell you. Before we get into a game, no one has any idea what is going to happen. Is the enemy jungler going to level 2 gank? Is the enemy mid laner going to flash on your mid laner when you hit level 3 off raptors? Are you going to have prio in mid and bot lanes so you can look to invade the enemy jungler's bot side? No one has any idea. So the jungling process is therefore quite simple. There is information and there is a reaction, your reaction to that information. Everything is reactionary. And just so there's no confusion, let me quash this rather like a name debate around proactive versus reactive jungling. Proactive is not the opposite of reactive. Being proactive is actually a reaction in itself. If I ask you what's the opposite of being proactive, well, inactive. If someone gets hit by a car, everyone has a reaction to it. Some people might sprint towards the scene. This is proactive. Or some might pretend they didn't see it so as not to bother themselves. This is inactive. Some junglers, after seeing the enemy bot lane literally 1 HP on a crashing wave, might run towards that lane to dive them. This is proactive. Other junglers will just keep clearing their caps. This is on the inactive side simply because there are champions to farm which give you more gold than just a camp or 2 might. Information is always changing on the rift, so if you're not changing, you are going to be left behind. One great example to give is from Coach Leo's analysis of Dante's early game jungling in this scrim, and I will link Babbitt's jungling content in the description. The information we have is that Hecarim is pathing bot, and the enemy Lee Sin is also pathing bot. We see his Raptor's gone, so he must have sided top side. Now, as Hecarim finishes walls at 230, his bot lane is already under the enemy bot lane's tower, and suddenly Zeri's HP goes from 100 to close to 0 real quick, and this is before Hecarim starts Raptors. We also know that the blue team's kill threat in bot lane is insane because they have great CC and burst damage with Nautilus and his Ignite, and they have a Draven as well. This is not Vayne Soraka. So if I ask you what should Hecarim do given the information we have, well, some of you might say to put another point in Q and farm because that's what you're meant to do on Hecarim, or some of you might say Hecarim should react to this information by skilling E and sprinting bot lane to dive the 1 HP Zeri. Basically, your elo as a jungler is determined by the reactions you make to information. I would rather get a potential 600 gold from the enemy Zeri and Janna because that's more worth than my bot camps, and my bot camps are not going anywhere. Zeri and Janna might die before Hecarim gets there after he clears all his camps. Don't you want to join the party? Chapter 4. Real teammates. map, scoreboard, F keys, game time. So how do we actually know when it's good to attack an enemy champion or their jungle camps or a river objective and when it's not good? Well, in every single game you play, you have a minimap, a scoreboard, F keys, and a game timer. All of these tools allow you to collect information, the first part of the jungling processes. The more information you have, you legit won't even have to think about what to do because it will be so obvious. For example, in this game, while I'm finishing my blue buff, I'm constantly looking at the minimap to see if lanes are fighting. If you ever see champions very close to one another, that probably means, on the minimap that is, they are exchanging attacks and or abilities and are therefore losing HP. Because I see Shen and Camille doing some weird voodoo stuff in the top lane, I keep double checking to make sure I have a guaranteed kill if I run there, and of course I do. Camille is literally running towards me with no flash, very low HP. But lots of junglers will struggle with these real teammates. The minimap is by far the most important weapon in your arsenal. So to use it, we have to first be able to look at it consistently. Well, how do we do that? Get into a practice tool, and while clearing your camps, I want you to look at your minimap each time you right click on the ground as you are kiting the camps. Essentially, after you auto attack a camp, you have a little bit of downtime before you can auto attack again. During this time, the best junglers click away from the camp to kite it and look at their minimap to gather information. Then they auto attack again, and then they kite and look at their minimap again. Then they auto attack again, and then they kite and map again. Kite and map, kite and map, kite and map. Do this for a good 10 minutes, and in your next rank game, actually say out loud, kite and map as you hit your first camp. Your eyes are muscles. You can train them, just like your brains, although some of you might be beyond saving. In the game against Shaden, I kill the enemy Soraka and then decide to recall. I don't even go for this bot crap. Why is that? Well, I looked at the minimap and was able to work out that the enemy mid laner had prio. Shaden is a conqueror Viego who is a strong skirmisher, and I don't know how this crab fight would go. If I don't think a play or a fight is 100% winning, then I am not flipping it. By looking at the minimap, I am able to find the best move in any given situation. If I show you this picture of the rift, as Belveth in this situation, I want you to take into account the information available to you and then react to it. So we are full HP in level 6, our bot lane has priority, but our mid laner isn't here. Surely that would make invading the enemy Poppy's bot side risky. But look at LeBlanc's HP for me. She's half HP with no teleport, so surely she would want to base after shoving that wave knowing her opponent, the Yasuo, will be back full HP. So Belveth can use this information to her advantage by invading the enemy Gromp. This information exists, but can you be bothered looking for it? One more thing about the minimap. Look above it for me. You can see your 8 teammates, but these 4 icons are actually very important. Your teammates here provide you with valuable information. That information being their HP. A lot of the time, if your teammate is low HP, the enemy champion they are against is going to be a very similar HP. This will encourage you to look at that lane more than other lanes. Also worth noting, when an enemy champion hits the deck, their icon will appear above your teammates with a death timer. These timers are huge, especially early game. Being aware of how long the enemy champions are gone for, especially the enemy jungler, is a must-have skill. You can then use this information to punish them for dying by taking their camps or an objective, or by killing their laners because they don't have their jungler to protect them. But early game, this can be very difficult because death timers are so short. And nowadays, we all have bonus movement speed running out of base after dying as well. Next up, we have the scoreboard. What information does this give us? Well, it tells you that your teammates are inting, true, but how? Well, it tells us kills, deaths, assists, it tells us levels, it tells us items, and crucially, it tells us junglers CS. Each camp in the game is worth 4 CS. So if the enemy jungler shows on the minimap, even for half a second, that number on your scoreboard will update automatically, as will their items and level. In games where you see the enemy jungler gank at level 2 or level 3, they could have 4 CS or 8 CS if they're level 2, and they'll have 12 CS or at least 12 CS when they're level 3. There's a big difference between all of them. If they've got 4 CS, they have just done 1 camp and ganked, meaning they still have 2 more camps left in that initial quadrant, and 3 camps on the other side of the map. So you could probably kill them on one of their camps if they are super low after ganking. If they gank with 8 CS, then they only have 1 more camp in that quadrant. So are you able to meet them at that final camp after their gank and kill them? And if they gank with 12 CS, can you take their camps in their second quadrant? Can you maybe get to that gank in time, knowing you can't meet them at any camps in that first quadrant because they cleared them? And if we keep going, stay with me, what about if they have 16 CS? Then they still have 2 more camps left. Good. In a lot of games, junglers will clear their entire jungle and have 24 CS. Then they do a scuttle crab and get to 28 CS. You then continue to track their CS because tracking their CS is literally jungle tracking. If they have full cleared with a crab, so 28 CS, and 30 seconds later gank a lane with the same CS, their first quadrant has probably all respawned. So they still have to take time to clear those camps again. Just like looking at the minimap, you have to train your finger or forehead, depending on what you're using, to get used to pressing tab when you see the enemy jungler. Do you want the latest iPhone or one of those telephones invented by Graham Alexander Bell back in the day? Stay updated. It goes without saying it's also useful to track items, levels, and CS of other lanes. If the enemy mid laner is level 6 6 but still has a Doran's ring, it's a lot less scary than the enemy Fizz, let's say, having Zork shoes and level 6. Or if the enemy bot lane is a level down and you decide to hit Dragon. You can use and exploit information about every champion on the Rift. It doesn't and shouldn't just be about the enemy jungler. Next up, F keys are always a struggle to get used to because unless you're that elastic chick off the Incredibles, you've really got to reach to press them. But with practice comes perfection. So practice them. Create a custom game, put 4 bots on your team, and after clearing a camp, get used to looking at each lane. Then clear your next camp and look at each lane. You have to train your fingers. Wait. This is also an essential skill because there is information you will not attain via the map and scoreboard that only looking at the enemy champions can give you. And can you think of what that might be? Well, if you look at an enemy champion, you will see their HP and mana and their levels, but HP and mana. HP is the most important stat because the damage you possess is measured in terms of hit points. So if you can deal 300 damage in a combo and the enemy top laner is 200 HP on the tower, you can easily kill them. So if you can look at an enemy's HP bar and your damage output covers those hit points, easy kill. Mana is also important because mana equals abilities. Every champion in the game is ability reliant, so without them, they are a shade of their usual self. The other bit of information that is really jungle specific when we look at the enemy jungler is the buffs they have. As soon as they show on the map, just panning your camera to them to know what buffs they have helps you confirm what their initial clear was, just like Kanavi does in this game. We see Hecarim with blue buff, but even that's not the max information. If you really want a jungle track to perfection, you can left click on the enemy jungler and their HUD will appear in the top left. If they have red or blue buff, you will see a timer over the top of it. If there is a lot of time left on the timer, then they must have done that buff recently. Can you see how the timer has barely started on Hecarim's blue buff? That means that he probably started Wolves. He has gone Wolves, Gromp, blue. That means his Wolves will respawn at 4 minutes, Gromp at 4:15ish, feel the power. And we'll get into those timings very soon. Last up, we have the game timer in the top right, and next chapter is dedicated to this resource, so hang tight. So to put it tersely, the time in a game represents the spawning or respawning of jungle camps and all river objectives. So if I say 20 minutes, hopefully all of you say Baron or FF. But if I say 350 or 530, associating a resource with a game time can add logic and normality to a very chaotic game at times. And by the way guys, if you are enjoying this jungle course, please remember to leave a like below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Any questions about the information here, feel free to leave a comment with that question in it. Chapter 5, jungle timings. So what are these jungle timings? 125, the late invade. If you have an insanely strong level 1 on one side of the map, then invading with a sweeper at around 125 can be devastating. If the enemy team fights, you win. If they don't fight, then the enemy jungler is cut off from that side of the map, and it should be the side of the map you care more about. So in this pro game, the blue team invades the enemy bot side. Though it's a little earlier than 125, the salient learning from this is the aftermath. The Rengar is forced to play on the top side of the map, and the enemy bot lane can never really contest for priority because of the jungle threat on their side of the map. This means they have to give up the lane, and they get dove as level 1 champions on the third wave. That's the devastating impact these late invades can have. 130, the first camp. Whether it's Raptors, Wolves, or above, your first camp spawns at 130. 145, the level 2 gank or invade. After finishing your first camp, you hit level 2 WoW, and some champions in the game can actually react differently and just react at this point to the enemy jungler. So champions like Shaco, Nidalee, Graves, Jarvan, these champions can look to level 2 gank or invade because they are very strong this early in a game, and most of the time this will be with red buff. Other champions like Sejuani, Rek'Sai, Rammus, their level 2 is kind of non-existent, so ganking or invading at this time is potentially a lot riskier and less rewarding. 230, the level 3 gank or invade or crossover. After clearing your third camp, you hit level 3 around 230 and you can gank, invade, or you can continue clearing towards your next quadrant. In other words, you are crossing over from one side of the map to the other. 330, the scuttle crabs. These two spawn on both sides of the map, but only one keeps respawning, and that is 2 minutes and 30 seconds after dying. You will always get notified by the minimap where the next crab is spawning because you will see a grey hourglass appear. This lets you know that in 60 seconds time something will spawn here, and that's for every other camp that's a river objective or camp that you had vision of when it was killed previously. 350, the first camp recall. If you started at a buff and then cleared another camp, this camp will respawn around 4 minutes 15 seconds. This will be a level 4 camp and therefore worth more experience than it was previously, so it's valuable. If there is literally nothing happening on the rift and you have nothing to farm, you can simply base it around 350 and get your respawning 415 camp on time. This is the case because it roughly takes about 30-35 seconds with a recall to get your Krugs or any camp on your side of the map really. 4 minutes. The the Raptors Wolves respawn. Start at Raptors or Wolves at 1:30. Well, these will respawn just before 4 minutes. If you do start at Raptors in particular, it's close to essential to re-clear them when they respawn, otherwise the enemy jungler might sneak in for that level 4 camp just sitting there. You can do the same for Wolves, of course, but Wolves are a lot harder to take because they are deeper in enemy territory, so you don't have to worry about them as much, whereas Raptors are a very quick hit and run job. 4:15, the first camp respawn. We've already talked about this, but just to clarify in case you got ganked by mum, this is the time your first camp you cleared after your buff start will respawn. Most of the time this will either be Krugs or Gromp. Just remember that Krugs, Raptors, Wolves and Gromp have 2-minute 15-second respawn timers. 5 minutes, the Dragon, and the second quadrant. The first Drake in a game spawns at 5 minutes. Pretty simple. The other resource to be aware of here is that if a jungler has full cleared, their second quadrant will respawn just before 5 minutes, unless they don't know how to clear camps properly. 5:30, the Grubs recall. Grubs spawn at 6 minutes now, so if you recall at 5:30, you will get there in time to start them right away. But like the other timers, do you always recall at 5:30 to do Grubs? Do you always recall at 3:50 to do your first camp again? Of course not, because the game will tell you. If you have a hard losing top and mid laner and the enemy jungler is also fed, how are you ever going to do Grubs? These timers are not laws you have to abide by. They are here just as guidelines, just to be aware of. 6 minutes, the Grub spawn. 6:45, the first buff respawn and first quadrant respawn. If you start at a buff, this buff will respawn around 6:45 because they have 5-minute respawn timers. Also, if a jungler has just been clearing camps as soon as they spawn, their first quadrant will respawn right after their first buff respawns. I might as well explain this. If you clear your respawning first quadrant at 4:15, then you are killing those camps at 4:30 and 4:45. This means that first camp is respawning at 6:45 and the second at 7 minutes. These correspond with your first buff respawn. If you are stronger than the enemy jungler at that point, you can always look to invade them on these 3 camps, and obviously be aware of a potential invade on your respawning buff in first quadrant if you're on the receiving end. 15 minutes, FF. Chapter 6, Tempo. Tempo is running out of base, and in turn, it is recalling. Lots of people think recalling is about spending gold or replenishing HP. Of course these matter, but the real reason you recall is to run at a resource, whether you are attacking that resource in the form of enemy jungle camps or river objectives, or defending your own camps. And this is why the tempo chapter is preceding the jungle timings chapter. These timings will dictate your tempo. So in this game, I killed the enemy Milio and base a few seconds later. But Eagz, why are you recalling? Your whole bot side is up. Aren't you meant to clear your camps? No, you're meant to react to the information in your game. I know that the enemy jungler is not here because he would have showed by now, so they have to be topside. I started topside in this game, so look in the top right for me. My Krugs and Raptors are about to respawn. How dare a weaker enemy jungler invade my camps? Echo dies a few seconds later. Not because I backed to spend gold or to make sure the shopkeeper was still kicking, because I used defensive tempo on a resource I cared about. And can we also just marvel at the Scraggers combo? Being for no reason, then flashing because he was going to miss his body slam, and then taking the kill from a Shaco already with a kill as a TP weak side top laner. Man, I wonder why I tilt so much, eh? In this example, Kanavi kills Hecarim, Twisted Fate, and Nautilus. And lots of junglers might think, let's do Dragon. Wow, it helps our team scale. They give us so much value. Are you losing Dragon if you don't do it now? Of course not. So why would you do Dragon and potentially lose? Your top side, correct. This is at 11 minutes in a game, by the way. And the death time has come around so quickly that if you haven't recalled close to instantly, you will lose your camps for no reason. So Kanavi recalls and covers his Raptors. I also found this in 10 seconds on YouTube. I didn't take 1 hour to find an example to illustrate what tempo actually is. It's in every high challenger jungle game. In this game, Owner gets a triple kill on Lee Sin, killing the enemy jungler and bot lane. And after shoving out the next wave, what does he do? He does Dragon. No, I'm joking. Graves is running out of base knowing that Owner is bot side of the map. Okay, so if Owner's bot side of the map here, what could I do? Well, let's think about Owner. Do you think he's going to do Dragon here, knowing that Graves is running out of base? Well, let me ask you the same question as before. If he does Dragon, does he lose anything? Yes, his top side. So Owner, just like Kanavi, recalls and covers his Krugs and Raptors. Graves thinks the same as well. So can you see this blue ping on Owner's head when he's at Krugs? That's Graves pinging where Lee Sin is. He also knows that doing Dragon is troll. What about attacking tempo? Well, if I know I am strong and can kill the enemy jungler without my laner's help, I will always do it. The difficult part is actually knowing if you can make that happen or not. So you really have to understand your champion, and that's a whole nother video. So in this game, I end up killing the Fizz, taking Kindred's, Krugs, and I could recall here. But is there anything I'm really recalling for? Yeah, but Eagz, you can buy Profane Hydra. My goodness, let's recall then. No, you recall because you can attack or defend a resource. My Krugs are not respawning here for close to 60 seconds because I cleared them before coming down here. So I can actually full clear my bot camps and then recall for my top side. But as I run out of base, my eyes light up because the weaker enemy jungler's blue buff is spawning soon. So I let my team know that Shaco wants to take over the game, and I drive by Raptors just because I can do them in time, and we end up winning a fight and we extend our lead, all because we use a bit of attacking tempo. Chapter 7. Ones, twos, threes. What you just saw in that last example of me invading the enemy jungler's camps is me applying this ones, twos, threes concept. The map is split into 3 sections. Number 1 represents the enemy jungler's camps and the enemy laners. These are ones. Number 2 represents the river and the resources that spawn in it. So the crabs, dragons, grubs, rifthold, and barons. These are twos. Number 3 represents your own jungle camps. These are threes. The enemy champions and enemy jungler's camps are ones because they are the biggest impact resources on the map. If you kill an enemy champion or take their camps, it has a huge sway in terms of gold, providing you're not losing the same amount elsewhere. When I see Shaden killing my inting bot lane here, I know that he cleared from bot to top, so his second quadrant will be spawning very soon, around 5 minutes. So I do my wolves, because if I go there straight away, I am going to be way too early. So I do my wolves and then I take his raptors and dip. But Eagz, shouldn't you always sequence your camps? No. Remember that Dante's example from earlier? Because his brain is locked into must clear my threes, I am Hecarim, he misses out on ones. Another way of thinking about it is out to in. My threes are chilling, so let me get some ones or twos first. In this Kanavi game, he starts doing his wolf camp and spots the Hecarim running through mid lane towards the bot side of the map. As soon as he sees Hecarim ganking bot lane, how does he react? He smites the big wolf and runs into Hecarim's bot side jungle. He smites because he wants to finish the camp ASAP to attack the ones he sees on the minimap. These being Hecarim himself, his 3 camps bot side, Hecarim's, and even Twisted Fate, who is around half HP. If he does Gromp after wolves, he is doing that because there is literally nothing happening on the map, but in this game, that would really be trolling. So he runs into Hecarim's bot side because we always play jungle camps first, and then decides, wait, this TF is a free 300 gold for me or Silas, and that means more than Hecarim's raptors, let me do that instead. So kills are always the priority. The enemy jungler's camps are great, but if an enemy laner or the jungler themselves is asking to be killed, just put them out of their misery. Kanavi's Gromp and blue buff aren't going anywhere as well in this game. One more example. Kanavi is doing red buff and all of a sudden Evelyn shows top side. So do we keep clearing our own camps? Well, there aren't any, so no, unlucky. Do we do dragon? Well, it's a 2. That's not bad, but what about Evelyn's bot camps and potentially her bot lane? Aren't those ones? Indeed they are. And what happens? We get Evelyn's Gromp and kill her bot lane. Chapter 8, early clears. We still need to know what camps we should clear in the early game. The only clear that you really have is the camp you start at. And after that, there may be many variations depending on what's happening or the information in your game. So you have 4 possible starting camps, if you're not late invading, that is. These being red buff, blue buff, raptors, and wolves. What camp you start at depends, first of all, on where you want to path. And this should always be the lane that can snowball the best out of top and bot lane. Mid lane is always there, right? So you're never really pathing towards mid. So if you have top laners like Ornn, Malphite, Cassante, these tanky champions who usually run teleport, they are going to be Ornn, Malphite, and Cassante regardless of how many kills or deaths they have. But top laners like Darius, Set, or Renekton with Ignite, they want to get going early game, and are very strong duelers, so fighting alongside them is smart. The real question comes when you have 2 lanes that are strong or 2 lanes that are weak. What then? So let's say you have Darius top and your bot lane is Kalista Pike. Honestly, pathing towards either one is fine. The most important part you play in these games is pinging where the enemy jungler is or the other side of the map, so the strong lane you're not actually near does not die. You can't be everywhere, right, at once, so you want your Darius to hold the fort until you get there, or your bot lane to be patient until you get there. If you have 2 weak lanes, let's say you have Ornn top and Smolder bot with a Soraka support for argument's sake, then pathing bot is still optimal, because if anything happens to a TP Ornn or TP top laner generally speaking, they can just teleport back and mitigate their losses. If that happens to your bot lane, then GG. So if you want to path top, you start on your bot side, and if you want to path bot, you start on your top side. But should you start at the buff or the raptor or wolf camp? If your jungler has excellent AoE, so an ability that damages multiple targets around it, then starting raptors is great. As a Kayn, Hecarim, Lilia, Udyr, and all the other junglers with AoE, this camp will be done so quick. But what about wolves? Well, wolves are a little more annoying because they take a little longer, and the other 2 camps in that quadrant are single monster camps, blue buff and Gromp. In the raptors quadrant you have Krugs, and it feels so much better clearing those 2 camps compared to wolves and Gromp. So the only reason you start wolves is because you want to recall on a specific gold value after you come back to them at 4 minutes, and then your Gromp as well. Doing so will give you at least 1100 gold, close to 1200 gold to spend. If you don't don't care about this, then just start blue. Now, if you start at red buff, the most popular pathing by far is just to do Krugs and then Raptors afterwards. This clears the entire quadrant, meaning if you were to make a play on the other side of the map, there is no camp counterplay for the enemy jungler. There are some other red buff start clears, but they are very champion specific. Nunu players like to do red Raptors and then Gromp, and some Trundle or Warwick players might like to do red-blue Gromp because they can't really clear the multiple monster camps that efficiently. If you start Raptors because you have good AoE, then there are two paths you can take. You can do Krugs next to fully sequence the two camps, meaning they will respawn together, and you simply keep farming, so your red buff, then down to your wolves, but only if there are no ones available, right? Or you can do Raptors into red buff and then Krugs and then recall. This sounds a little weird, but this 3-camp base is a must if you are against a scary level 3 jungler and your mid and bot lanes are weak. Otherwise, this is going to happen. Kanavi clears his red buff quadrant and invades the Evelyn's walls. Nidalee obviously beats Evelyn and he gets her flash and kills her. If Evelyn wards the entrance to her bot side jungle at around 110 and does a 3-camp base, this never happens. But you can also do a 3-camp base if you feel as if that longsword or dark seal difference makes the difference for when you fight the enemy jungler. So in this game, Kanavi is Conqueror Lee Sin against Conqueror Hecarim. Now the 1v1 here isn't clear who wins, and it might depend on Hecarim's Q stacks and if he has W, but yeah, it's not 100% Lee Sin winning. So to make it that, Kanavi recalls knowing the longsword puts him well above Hecarim in terms of power. If you start a blue buff, very simple. Gromp, then wolves, and then we jungle. If you start at wolves, then Gromp to fully sequence the camps together, then blue buff, and then we jungle. Chapter 9, securing leads. The biggest difference between challenger junglers to grandmaster junglers and master junglers and every other elo jungler is their ability to deny counterplay, which is literally what securing a lead is. So when you have more gold than the enemy jungler, whether that be through killing them or one of their laners, in the early game there is almost always a resource or resources that they can quickly access to make up for their recent loss. The reason for this is because when a jungler shows, they are telling the world what camps they have done and what camps they have not done. The camps they have not done are the resources the enemy jungler will be interested in. Basically, the jungler who sees the enemy jungler making a play and killing their teammates is saying, okay, you can kill my teammates, even me, but you're going to lose this now because of that. If you are farming your own camps when the enemy jungler is making a play on your teammates, you are trolling. Doing your threes in these situations is a recipe for disaster. Remember that example I showed where I stole Shaden's Raptors because he was showing on vision bot side? Even if he doesn't double kill my win trading bot lane, I'm still taking his Raptors because he is giving me information on where he is, of course, but more importantly, where he is not, that being top side. And because I know jungle timers, we can swoop in and take Raptors without any trouble. Listen to Broxer for me.
Here we go. So far so good, guys. We're doing work. I'm gonna put a ward here so I can see if Nidalee walks into my jungle, and then I'm gonna move topside to defend my top camps. Because now we've made a lot of plays, but we haven't really been farming much. And after denying their camps, I just want to make sure that I get all my own. Because if I can defend everything that I got, then Nidalee has no way of getting back in the game. I'm just gonna continue being ahead of her.
I made a video on this topic from one of my games and I want you to guess what I do. So there's a fight on the Lee Sin's top side because I'm stronger and my laners were doing well too, so I attacked the ones. We end up winning this fight, let's go. But so many junglers will throw leads after just getting one. All I'm thinking about is Lee Sin. He died in that fight and he has home guards running out of base. He knows that I am on his top side, so what might he think of doing in return? Well, he's probably saying to himself, you know what, you killed me there and you can have my camps, but while you're taking those and probably staying top side of the map, I'm going to take your bot side. I got you. That's what's in my head. I just got so many ones out of that play, but there is no way you get any of my threes in return, which are essentially the enemy jungler's ones. This is what securing a lead is, securing the map. Grubs might be up very soon. I mean, even if they were up, it doesn't matter. If I do grubs here, I lose something. If I secure my lead, I don't lose anything. Grubs are still going to be there. This is similar to defensive tempo, of course, but this chapter has been made if you are staying on the map. You can just bolt to the other side of the map and do it that way if you don't have much gold to spend. Pretty simple. You're now watching Canyon do it on Viego. He takes grubs and knows the enemy jungler will be thinking, how dare you take something top side of the map that I care about? Give me your bot side. You're now watching Kanavi do it on Lilia. After killing the enemy Rengar, not sure what that guy's smoking, but whatever, he takes Rengar's red buff and now knows that Rengar's only counterplay is taking Kanavi's bot side. It's quite fascinating here too, because Kanavi could actually recall, buy Dark Seal, and probably boots and just run at Rengar's bot side, or Amtone, whatever he's going to buy. But he decides to stay on the map, and instead of doing Gromp, he does Wolves, because they are easier to clear for the AoE Lilia. If he was playing Trundle or Warwick, I'm sure he would take Gromp, and then he covers his bot camps. If he does Gromp, it takes too long. The Rengar might get to his Raptors, maybe his red buff. So he does walls and then goes to Raptors. Then because he's doing his Raptors, he knows Rengar is not here. He checks the Rengar's blue buff after doing the bot crab, and he's very surprised Rengar is not here, and more surprised when he shows the top side and mid. Because of this, Kanavi knows that if he ganks bot lane, it's a 3v2. Rengar is not here to protect his bot lane, so he ganks, kills Nautilus, and then he even kills Rengar on his Gromp because of the vision and his massive double buff and level advantage. The clip freezes, but we can see his kills go from 2 to 3. This is Challenger Jungling. Chapter 10. Ganking. Even though I made a full-length course dedicated to ganking, and I'd recommend watching that video along with the others, I will briefly summarize why we gank and how to know if a gank is worth or not. Why do we gank? To make our laners feel better. No. Get a kill. There we go. To get a kill. Gold. So how do we know when we can get a kill? Well, this question is a lot more nuanced because each jungler is different when it comes to damage output. So the onus is on you here and knowing your champion. Again, that's another video. But what getting a kill is quite simply dealing damage to the enemy champion so their HP goes to 0. If you can do that on your own, great. These are the best ganks. And that's the first question you ask yourself. Can I kill this enemy champion? If the answer is no, because you don't have enough damage, or they have flash, or they have an escape, and Ezreal might have his arcane shift, and Gnar might have his E. Any dashes can make it very hard, if not impossible. Then we ask, can we kill this enemy champion? So if you're not enough, then we ask the we. So if you have a great CC teammate like a Nautilus, it might not matter if the enemy Jhin has flash or not. We kill him before he can even react. But if you have a Lulu, or a Vladimir mid, or a Garen top, they don't really nullify the mobility the enemy champion might have. So you have to be able to judge 1, if you can actually deal the damage required in terms of the enemy champion's HP, and 2, if you can actually deal that damage before they react. And even if they react, they're still dead. Think of Malzahar level 6 with flash. If you gank that lane, even if the enemy mid laner reacts afterwards, they're probably dead anyway because they will be so low. The last tip, but certainly not the least, is wave timing. Waves spawn every 30 seconds. The first wave is in lane at 1:30, the next at 2 minutes, then at 2:30, etc. Ganking on a fresh wave is often critical because if a fresh wave is in lane, that means the enemy champions are going to be in lane for another 15 to 20 seconds in the early game, because who doesn't want golden experience? The real timing to be aware of here though is actually being near that lane when the game time ends in 25 or 55. That sounds weird, as I know, but being near that fresh wave 5 seconds before it gets damaged, and this matters a lot in mid lane because lots of range mages can damage waves before they make it into the lane itself. It gives you plenty of time to navigate your gank and get a kill. So in the game against Shaden, and apologies for bringing this game up so much, but it's just so vivid in my memory, I know Shaden is clearing his camp's topside. That means if I gank bot lane, it is a pure 3v2. We should hard win unless my bot lane is hard trolling. But after Raptors, can you see how far away that gank is? It's probably about 15 seconds away, meaning that I would be ganking at the end of the wave that's currently in bot lane because it's only 3 minutes. So I want to try to run to that bot lane while a wave is running to that lane. Can you see how the timing is almost perfect here with me running to gank bot and that next wave arriving in lane? I am here when it arrives, and GG. For tier climbs, you can book one-on-one coaching through my website for over 1,000 coaching sessions. Patreon is linked down below. This has been Eagz. Don't be shy. Bye.